Good day, everyone. Today we will be discussing the importance of virginity or miswage versus sowing wild oats. I am Cristel Jessa Salazar, and I'll be discussing the definition and its effect on women. First, what is virginity and miswage? In historical Japan, particularly in Oiran, the high-ranking courtesan and geisha communities, miswage referred to the ceremonial loss of a young courtesan's virginity, often through a transactional arrangement with a wealthy patron. While not all geisha underwent, the practice was more common among courtesans, reinforcing the idea that a woman's virginity was a commodity tied to her social and economic value. In broader traditional and conservative cultures, female virginity has often been idealized as a marker of purity, morality, and worth, leading to social stigmas against women who engage in premarital sex. On the other hand is the sowing wild oats. The phrase refers to the idea that men, particularly young men, should gain sexual experience before settling down. This concept is widely accepted in many cultures, often excused as part of a man's natural development, reinforcing the notion that sexual freedom is a right for men but a shameful act for women. Unlike women, men who engage in premarital or casual sex are often praised, encouraged, or at least not socially penalized in the same way. Now let's go to its effects on women. The contrast between these two concepts creates a double standard that has significant consequences for women. Number one, social stigma and honor-based judgment. Women who engage in premarital or casual sex often face harsh criticism, being labeled as promiscuous or immoral. In extreme cases, this leads to honor-based discrimination, where a woman's worth is measured by her sexual history. Second, economic and personal autonomy restrictions. The commodification of virginity or miswage, in historical context, reflects how women's bodies were and sometimes still are treated as financial assets. This limits women's autonomy as their value in marriage, family, and even career opportunities may be affected by perceptions of their sexual past. Third, psychological impact. Women are often made to feel shame or guilt over their sexuality, while men are encouraged to explore theirs freely. This can lead to anxiety, low self-esteem, and internalized misogyny, where women judge themselves and others harshly based on these cultural norms. The last is the sexual double standard in modern society. While many societies have progressed, remnants of these beliefs persist. Women are often expected to balance being pure enough for long-term relationships while also being experienced enough to be desirable. Meanwhile, men rarely face the same level of scrutiny regarding their sexual history. The contrast between miswage and sowing wild oats highlights a long-standing gender double standard in attitudes towards sex. Women face social, emotional, and economic consequences for behavior that is often encouraged in men. Addressing this issue requires challenging cultural narratives, promoting gender equality, and ensuring that women have the same freedom and respect regarding their choices as men.
Good day, everyone. Today we will discuss the pressing issue of gender inequality in the Philippines, which encompasses various forms of discrimination and violence against women. This includes gender-based violence, sexual harassment, and workplace discrimination. To address the issues, several Philippine laws have been enacted, including Republic Act Number 9262, or the Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act of 2004, Republic Act Number 8353, or the Anti-Rape Law of 1997, Republic Act Number 777, the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act of 1995, and Republic Act Number 9208, the Anti-Trafficking in Persons Act 2003. Let's start with the feminist schools of thought. Liberal feminism. Liberal feminism focuses on achieving gender equality through legal and political reforms. It emphasizes individual rights, equal opportunities, and the elimination of discriminatory practices in society. Its application in Philippine laws involved RA 9262, which supports legal remedies and protection for women and their children against violence, ensuring access to justice and protection orders. RA 7877 addresses workplace and educational harassment, ensuring safe environments for women. RA 9208 advocates for laws protecting women from exploitation such as trafficking. Radical feminism. Radical feminism seeks to address the root cause of gender inequality by challenging patriarchal system and cultural norms that perpetuate violence and discrimination against women. Its application to Philippine laws is Republic Act or RA 9262, which highlights the systematic nature of violence against women, recognizing the psychological impact of prolonged abuse. RA 8353, which supports the expanded definition of rape, aligning with feminist critiques of sexual violence. And RA 9208, which views trafficking as a commodification and exploitation of women's bodies. Next, we will be discussing jurisprudence and case law regarding these feminist schools of thought and issues. So the first case is Agasid E. Dejanio versus People of the Philippines, which is just a recent case made by or decided by the Supreme Court last year. The issue in this case, the applicability of RA 9262 to homosexual or specifically lesbian relationships. The ruling of the court is that the Supreme Court ruled that RA 9262 applies to lesbian relationships, affirming that, uh, as quoted, from the plain text of the law, it is clear that the offense may be committed by any person against a woman or her child. Number two is Philippine Telegraph and Telephone Company versus National Labor Relations Commissions et al. Et al. The issue in this case is discriminatory workplace policies. The court emphasized the importance of laws like for the ruling, the court emphasized the importance of laws like RA 7877, stating that corrective labor and social laws on gender inequality have emerged due to our country's commitment as a signatory to the United Nations Convention on the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. For the next case, it's Halagenia et al. Versus Philippine Airlines. For this case, the issue was gender-based retirement policies. The court held that the compulsory retirement provision was discriminatory, reinforcing the prohibition of workplace discrimination under Article 133 of the Labor Code. For numbers 2 and 3, it involved women being discriminated in the workplace due to their gender. Next is number 4, People of the Philippines versus Humawan. The issue in this case is marital rape. The court ruled that a husband does not own his wife's body by reason of marriage. For the fifth case, People of the Philippines versus Casio, the issue is trafficking in persons. The ruling of the Supreme Court involved trafficking in human beings is a manifestation of one of the most flagrant forms of violence against human beings, especially towards women, although not specifically quoted in this slide or stated. It is specifically the Supreme Court ruled that women and children are more prone to these kinds of acts uh, in reality, so to speak. Number 6, Republic of the Philippines versus Manalo. Issue in this case, application of laws protecting women from domestic abuse. The court ruled that women and children are almost always helpless victims of all forms of domestic abuse and violence, similarly to the case discussed or stated in number 5. And then lastly, care for number 7, XXS versus People of the Philippines. The issue is marital infidelity as a psychological violence. The court ruled that the conviction for psychological, the court upheld the conviction for psychological violence, stating marital infidelity was deemed a form of psychological violence punishable under the law. So, to address these issues and uh, correlate with the schools of thought, feminism schools of thought, the following measures are recommended. Strengthen legal protections to enact comprehensive anti-discrimination laws that explicitly address sexual orientation and gender identity. Enhance enforcement, which ensures the strict implementation of existing laws through training for law enforcement and judicial personnel. Promote awareness to conduct public education campaigns to raise awareness about women's rights and available legal remedies. And fourth, support victims to establish more shelters, counseling services, and legal aid programs for victims of gender-based violence and discrimination. So that is all for my report. These are the sources that I have gotten the information from my report from, such as the case laws, the jurisprudence, the cases, and the laws, and the definitions of some terms of the from this presentation. Thank you very much.
The biggest rights issue which we seek to address is the importance of virginity, which results to the following acts that violates Philippine laws for women: gender-based violence and sexual violence and harassment. So this law on women are violated. RA 9262, the Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act of 2004, an act defining violence against women and their children, providing for protective measures for victims, prescribing penalties therefore, and for other purposes. So the law covers several acts of violence, which are physical violence, or acts that include bodily or physically harm, causing, threatening, or attempting to cause physical harm to the woman, or placing the woman in fear of imminent physical harm. Sexual violence, the acts which are sexual in nature committed against a woman. It includes, but is not limited to, rape, sexual harassment, acts of lasciviousness, treating a woman or her child as a sex object, making demeaning and sexually suggestive remarks, physically attacking the sexual parts of the victim body, prostitution, causing or attempting to make the woman or a child to perform sexual acts by the use of force, threats, intimidation directed against the woman. Republic Act Number 8353, or an act expanding the definition of the crime of rape, reclassifying the same as a crime against persons, amending for the purpose Act Number 3815 as amended, otherwise known as the Revised Penal Code, and for other purposes. Under Article 266, rape is committed by a man who shall have carnal knowledge of a woman under any of the following circumstances: through force, threat, or intimidation, when the offended party is deprived of reason or otherwise unconscious, by means of fraudulent machination or grave abuse of authority, when the offended party is under 12 years of age or is demented, even though none of the circumstances mentioned above be present. Republic Act 7877, the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act of 1995, an act declaring sexual harassment unlawful in the employment, education, or training environment and for other purposes. Under RA 7877, sexual harassment is defined as work, education, or training-related sexual harassment is committed by an employer, employee, manager, supervisor, agent of the employer, teacher, instructor, professor, coach, trainer, or any person having authority, influence, or moral ascendancy over another in a work or training or education environment demands, requests, or otherwise requires any sexual favor from the other, regardless of whether the demand, request, or requirement for submission is accepted or not by the object of said act.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jafali Sarip, and I'll be doing my part on the presentation of the importance of virginity or Mizuwage versus wild oats. The topic that I'm gonna tackle is uh, the issues surrounding uh, this subject and the actions that are movements that are being used to fight it. So, to begin, throughout history, gender equality has been deeply rooted in the societal views of virginity. Uh, Women are often shunned based on who they have been with or how many partners they have had. Meanwhile, men are encouraged, praised sometimes for having multiple relationships to explore their options, or as the saying goes, sowing wild oats. Uh, this One example of this is Mezuage, as discussed by my group mates earlier. In many cultures, a woman's worth is often linked to her virginity, influencing her prospects, and even determining her dowry. This standard was rarely applied to men, and this discrimination was fueled by religious traditions. Th- uh, this can be proven through Deuteronomy 22:13-21, which states that a woman found not to be a virgin on her wedding night could be stoned to death. Throughout history, women were frequently offered in marriage edge, uh, to secure titles, alliances, peace, wealth, or power, while a man's worth was seldom questioned in the same way. Uh, in terms of sowing wild oats, there's a double standard that exists here. One of the biggest issues in this discussion is that, and in many societies, virginity is considered sacred and purity is seen as an important value, primarily for women. Meanwhile, men's sexual activity is largely overlooked or, like I said before, celebrated. Women, however, are subject to scrutiny and in some cases shunned by for having multiple partners. This double standard is still prevalent today, particularly on social media, where the modern equivalent of a woman sowing wild oats leads to slut shaming. Women are judged more harshly than men for their sexual choices, and this discrimination can have a serious consequence, and which results in social stigma surrounding of the female sexuality, and can lead to emotional distress, mental health struggles, and self-isolation due to fear of judgment. One of the many actions that have been made to tackle this issue was RA 917, RA 9710, or more commonly known as Magna Carta of Women. This legislation ensures women's rights are upheld, promotes gender equality, and it seeks to eliminate practices that perpetuate discrimination. By reinforcing legal protections and advocating for social change, laws like this one play a crucial role in fostering a more inclusive and equitable society. However, while women today have gained more freedom when it comes to exploring sexual relationships and they are less criticized for it, they must recognize the importance of sexual health and safety. That is what RA 10354 is, Responsible Parenthood and Reproductive Health Act, which ensures access to family planning, reproductive health services, and comprehensive sexual education. There are many groups right now out there that are promoting sexual expression and body positivity. These organizations promote sexual education among women for sexual and they are advocates for sexual autonomy among the women youth. They aim to protect women from discrimination that can impact their personal and public lives. They've made significant progress in protecting those rights and freedoms, as seen in the growing acceptance of these movements, and that the stigma against uh, of female sexual expression has slowly been fading, but it still exists in certain cultures. But both local and international laws have been enacted to promote equality and protection against such discriminations. So, what you see before you is the various groups and movements that are fighting for women's rights and protecting them against discrimination. As a result of these, outdated practices, as a result of movements like these, not just the ones here in the Philippines, but across the globe, outdated practices like misoagi have been faded into history, and the concept of sewing Waldos is no longer exclusive to men. Women now have the freedom to explore relationships without being confined by outdated societal expectations. Uh, as the modern age progresses and every movement like this is made, we move closer and closer and closer to a more progressive and inclusive future. That's it for my report today. Thank you.